What's up, guys? It's John with National Sports Entertainment. And before we start, I would like to kindly ask everybody to please give yourselves a round of applause. If you want to stand up and take a bow, tip your cap, whatever you want to do, give yourself a nice little pat on the back. Because we have done something that has never been done. And I don't mean just us, I mean everybody that has pointed this out for the last 2 years or so, only to be completely, in the very beginning, dismissed and mocked and ridiculed. We have forced the NFL, ESPN, CBS, the mainstream sports media, to, in my opinion, completely scramble to do everything possible now that they understand half of their fan base thinks that the NFL is rigged. A year ago, even 6 months ago, I don't think people thought we would have reached this point. But I'm going to go through this article, and it's a very interesting one. And we've seen stuff like it. We've seen the commercial script, right? We saw Arian Foster come out last year, and we saw Pat McAfee try his shtick. And we knew it wasn't going to work because we knew they were doing it. Basically, they moved up from denial to bargaining. And you'll see a little bit of anger. There's a hidden stage of grief, stage of denial, and it's like right in between bargaining and anger and even sad. It's like a combination of the three. It's like straight up saltiness. So let's go through this article and just think if you would ever have seen this article a year ago, and also think if this article would be out if it was just a small fringe group of people that believe the NFL is scripted. So we got, as somebody who has read every conspiracy theory ever published on the internet, which by the way you should never do, I have finally found the one that is going to take the NFL down. We're on to you, Roger Goodell, and your world has come crashing down this weekend when everybody learns that the NFL has been predetermining who is going to play in the Super Bowl based on the colors of the Super Bowl logo. So as you can see, this particular artist is trying to invoke some satire and condescending language just to make anybody that's been pointing this out look to be like a complete nutcase, when in actuality, you can just feel the disdain, the anger, the saltiness in this article, and in general. So now we have just a tweet that one guy put it out. I've thought about this dumb theory every day for the last month, starting to get concerned. So I guess this person is concerned that the conspiracy theorist might be right. This is something I don't get about people that completely dismiss conspiracy theorists. And again, conspiracy was literally a term that was invented by the George Bush CIA to get people not to talk about things such as the assassination of Kennedy, aliens, things of that nature. And they did a whole brainwash campaign there. That's where the Mockingbird media really stepped in. But it's interesting because the one side, in my opinion, the conspiracy theorists are 100% open. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the theories, right? On the other hand, you have people that would rather be correct than be right. And by that I mean they just want to be correct. They want to be able to say that what they said was true instead of doing the right thing and reassessing. So here, this person's actually concerned that the theorist might be right and he might be wrong. So that's kind of odd. You'd think people would want to find the truth, but let's keep going. The evidence is right in front of our face. It's in front of us and it's clear. This would be like if a flat earther actually sailed off the side of the planet, then we'd have to believe them. The logo is right there and it says the Ravens and Niners are going to play in the Super Bowl. There's no way I can pick against that. So I'm not even sure I need to pick the games this week. At least that's what I thought. After reading through 79 Taylor Swift stories over the past 24 hours, which is basically a normal Monday for me, sounds like a sane person, I'm not now convinced that the NFL's plan is for a Lions-Chiefs Super Bowl. And that they just used the logo thing to throw us all off, just like the people who buried all those fake dinosaur bones in the 1800s to make us think dinosaurs exist, because dinosaurs aren't real, according to another conspiracy I read on the internet. It's looking like Eminem vs. Taylor Swift Super Bowl, which is pretty interesting, by the way. The only man that can stop her now. Eminem versus Taylor Swift, truly a showdown we've been waiting for. So should I go with the Lions, Chiefs, or Ravens, Niners? To figure out who I should pick, I decided to do my own research because you can't trust anything you read on the internet anymore. So what did I find out? And this is where it just kind of goes into actual football, speak. Still some sarcasm here, but for the most part, it just goes into like records and things of that nature. The one day advantage doesn't sound like much, but when you think about it like this, while the Chiefs will be busy fighting for their lives in a one-score win over the Bills on Sunday night, the Ravens were sitting around tweeting out shirtless locker room photos. This is, again, an article from CBS, and for it to be so condescending and for it to be so satirical, in my opinion, is just very interesting. So you see the Ravens here. And it's funny they mentioned the shirtless photo because I remember they had in the script commercial they did the whole like, oh, we should do shirt versus skins and stuff like that. But it is very interesting. So not only are the Ravens and Niners more rested, they'll both be playing at home this week, which is definitely a huge advantage in the conference title round. In 8 of the last 10, the home team has won the NFC Championship game. In what can only be described as a perfect coincidence, the home team has also won 8 of the last 10 titled games in the AFC. So it appears those stats are in line with the Super Bowl logo conspiracy because they're also telling me to take the Ravens and Niners. So anyway, now they go into the picks themselves. And this is where it's interesting because I went into this before. People have talked about, and again, that's, they kind of goes into the game itself, but also does some like jokes here and I'll say attempted jokes, things of that nature, and just pointing out, in my opinion, why again this is like a way that they are creating a paradox because, and I'm going to go into it in a second, but at the end of the day, this person, I guess they're going with the Niners. I don't know who they're going with, but you can see that they brought up multiple scripts here that would make sense. Obviously, again, oh, Eminem versus the Chiefs, so that's a great one. Oh, it has to be the Niners and the Ravens because that's the logo, and they're going into all the different, scripted matchups, sarcastically. Now the thing is, a it's again, it's just a win in general. Like it's not about the games themselves. Like obviously they matter, but what's more important is the fact that we have forced again the NFL to come out and now be putting out. This is the second article I've read where they have talked about Taylor Swift, and I'm going to go into that in a second. Where they have to, are coming out. If you go to CBS, I think it's NFL on CBS. It's a it's on their YouTube channel, and they just talk about the logo and they're like, "Oh, it's just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence. This is ridiculous." All these ridiculous theories, and of course they can never refute the theories. They can never explain how people like us can nail these matchups when these experts can't nail them, and all the shenanigans that happen. They just, compare us to a fringe group of people and expect that to be that. And it's only going to get worse for them. Like there's no going back from this. They are doubling down, and when you keep doubling down, eventually, just like Vegas, ironically, you run out. So the thing is, I honestly don't know where they're going to go from here. I expect them to really start trolling the fans, but they have given me a piece of information that I find very interesting because this logo theory, right? It's being called bait, and it seems so obvious, and it's the 2-1 seeds. But in the same breath, and again, they're doing it so they can explain why it's not scripted. Because at the end of the day, what they're doing is they're trying to, at least, they're trying to make a case for every one of these teams in a very passive aggressive way, right? So that way, it's like, oh well, no matter who wins, you're gonna say it's scripted because you have Eminem versus Taylor Swift, or you have the logo, and it would be clever if again they didn't wait so long, to try and get ahead of the story to the point where the reason they're doing this is because every other comment on their post on YouTube, it's getting ratio where people saying, yeah, it's scripted. So it's a big victory. Now, addressing the logo. I've looked at this, and while it might seem ridiculously obvious, the fact that they have defended this over and over again, in my opinion, makes me think we are going to get the Niners Ravens. I was thinking about it and I was like, okay, obviously they're not actually going to give us that because that's what they wouldn't bring it up themselves, acknowledge it, and then give it to us anyway. But I've seen a few articles now, and they're trying to make the case for the Chiefs. Here they're talking about Swift and Eminem, and someone in CBS in another article brought up something to the effect of, why would they have Taylor Swift the entire season and all these people at the Super Bowl, these celebrities, only to leave her out in the cold and not have her for the Super Bowl. Therefore it has to be the Chiefs. Like that would make much more sense to script than the Ravens. So it's an interesting, in my opinion, an interesting optic that they're taking. Instead of, if it was not going to be the Ravens Niners, I feel like they just wouldn't say a word, right? And then they'd let people be wrong, and then they'd come out and say, oh, I guess it wasn't them. But the fact that they're getting ahead of it makes me feel like they're trying to defend it for when it eventually happens, and they're creating all these other narratives. So the logo one just seems more ridiculous. And again, because people can say, oh, well, it could have been so many different colors, all these different things. Whereas the Chiefs one, if they are genuinely trying to convince people it's not scripted, you can't have the Chiefs win. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. And maybe the Chiefs could win and it could blow this whole thing open, but I just don't think that's what they're going to do. Again, because Pat McAfee brought this up last year. Oh my gosh, this is becoming a problem. Fans are convinced that it's scripted for another dynasty for Pat Mahomes. Now this year you have Taylor Swift the entire year. If they get in the playoffs and people already think it's scripted, then it's just going to completely fuel the fire, and way more people, in my opinion, will say, oh my gosh, what a scripted season if it's Chiefs, whoever, Chiefs Lions or Chiefs Niners, versus if it's the Ravens. Because the Ravens haven't done anything absolutely absurd. They've just played good football from what people can see. Outside of the logo, which again is not the strongest argument, it's a pretty interesting one, but it could be chalked off as a coincidence. Whereas the Taylor Swift situation has been orchestrated, choreographed, and completely set up from the beginning by the NFL. So I just don't see why they would give the fans, again, more reason to call it scripted. Again, you have fans who are just turning. They haven't seen the logo theory. But they're like, this stuff's weird. That Chiefs Bill game was fishy. And now you have the Chiefs go back again with Super Mahomes. It would just be way more, in my opinion, indicative of a scripted game than, or yeah, just a scripted playoffs than if we got the Ravens. That's just what I think. A lot of people are telling me the Niners aren't going to do it. It's going to be the Lions. I would concede if they really want people to believe it's not scripted, then the best matchup's Ravens Lions. Because again, you have the Chiefs in there, people are going to say it's scripted. It's just as simple as that. And on the NFC side, because the Niners, they fit the logo, there's a lot of other reasons. But at the end of the day, they're trying to make a case for all these teams. As you can see, they're bringing Eminem into this, all these different things. So I like the Niners Ravens more than ever. And had I not seen 2 or 3 articles now that have gone into the logo and then deviated by saying, oh, but what about Taylor Swift? Then I would say, okay, you know what? They really are just trying to make fools of us, and it might not be the Niners Ravens like we thought. But the fact that they're trying to justify and rationalize, whatever term you want to use, and get us to believe, okay, yeah, that does make sense. Why would they give us this when they could give us the Chiefs? And then to go ahead and give us the Chiefs, I feel like is just one of the most counterintuitive things they could ever do. You throw in the money line, and again, it just really doesn't make much sense in my opinion. So yeah, I thought this article was very interesting, very vindicating because, again, this is a CBS reporter, you know, NFL, they're all the same, Disney, and it's just very interesting that they are just openly, even though they're doing it in a of course, a satirical way, admitting these scripts and admitting that there are not just one, but I'd say millions of people that are subscribed to these theories because of how ridiculous the NFL has gotten. And they're at a point where there's not much they can do. They can keep trying this type of stuff and then maybe try and throw us a swerve, but it didn't work when Pat McAfee tried it, and it's not going to work this time around. The only thing that's going to work is if they actually start playing football and they stop scripting games. Like, there's nothing else that's going to work just because of how out of touch they got. And then I guess they just assumed people were so stupid and, oh, it's just a small group of idiots. It reminds me of another, quote, conspiracy theory group about half the country who understands that if politics can be rigged, then sports can be rigged. And they did the same thing to the folks who understood that politics is rigged. They put them in a box, and at first there was complete denial. There was no mention of any of the individuals who came out, whether it was the QAnon, the 4chan, any of the MAGA supporters, and all the theories. It was absolutely nothing. And then it was mocking. And then it became anger as they realized, wow, it's more people than we thought. And I'm seeing anger from the CBS video on YouTube. Those guys are angry. They're saying how they're so frustrated that people can be so stupid and believe that it's scripted. And, again, they're really close to, in my opinion, acceptance. And acceptance would be, in my opinion, I mean, they are kind of accepting it, but they're doing it satirically. So, essentially coming out and conceding, making some type of concession. Which, again, I feel like they already are doing. They're just doing it in a very, very passive aggressive way. So, this article was interesting to me. I didn't, when I saw the very beginning, I thought it was going to be like a simulator. And then when I saw the very first paragraph, I'm like, this person is emotionally charged. The disdain, the saltiness spewing from this article, it'd be enough salt to completely dredge the Red Sea. It's just absolutely ridiculous in my opinion, and you can just feel it in the words. By the way, they are patronizing to people, and also, like I said, condescending to the people who thinks that, in my opinion, has every right to believe it's rigged. You know, comparing it to people saying dinosaurs didn't exist and the fossils were planted. A little bit different to do that than for a sports entertainment business to sports entertain. So you could see that, in my opinion, the writing's on the wall. I don't know what the NFL is going to do next. I genuinely don't. This is one of the bigger bombshells, in my opinion, because again, this would not be an article if it wasn't like a quarter of the fan base that believes it's scripted. Which again, in just a year's time, is absolutely amazing. A year ago, you probably had like 1 in 10 fans. Maybe that, maybe not even that. 2, 3 years ago, I'd argue to say 5% of people thought it was scripted. And now we have, again, just go to any ESPN post, especially the ones where they put out like, oh, this is the first time this has happened since this, or can you believe this has happened? All those stupid posts, that's where they get completely ratioed. And again, I honestly don't know how they're going to handle it. If I was a sleazy operation, maybe I would know how they would handle it, but I'm not a sleazy, corrupt operation, so I don't know what they're going to do next. I think they're going to continue down this line a little more. I think the announcers are going to have some fun with it. The players are going to continue to do it. And I think at some point they're just going to basically come out and say, our job is to entertain you guys. Of course, we want to win, but at the end of the day, our health is important, and keeping the fans happy is priority numero uno. Something to that effect. They just can't continue with these sarcastic articles because they're not working. And if you watch that commercial, a lot of the comments, and again, you have to understand, they filter comments, they have bots, all these things, and still a lot of the comments are, you realize by doing this, we just are more convinced that it's scripted now. And they do it in a dramatized way by having them all sit around the table and pitch these ridiculous ideas. And again, it's just over exaggeration. I've noticed with, and it's not just with the sports media, but the media in general, the late night hosts who are now basically political pundits, they all have one very weak skill in common, weak tactic in common, and it's not just assuming that their audience is a bunch of 10-year-olds, but it's using the logic of 10-year-olds and just assuming that, people that watch are like children. It's almost like they're trying to cater to children instead of catering to adults. And this type of subject matter, you read through it, adults are not going to read this and say, "Oh my gosh, yeah, like this is a great funny article." Like how these idiots, these complete schmucks, cavemen, they believe that the moon was thrown into orbit and it doesn't exist. It's just a ball of cheese because that's just really all they have is this over exaggerating using hyperbole. And again, I think the walls are closing in, and the fact that they keep bringing up Taylor Swift and how it's this she's this giant draw, and whether they're directly or indirectly indicating that without Taylor Swift, it's not a complete story. You have to have Swift there. You get the Super Bowl ring, and then he gives her ring. So it's almost like they're trying to give us, push the argument that the Chiefs would make more sense in a scripted league. So going back to the beginning, again, I'm not saying the logo theory is the reason, but I do believe a bunch of people for different reasons, and there was different reasons. I remember a video where they were showing like a corgi in a Niners outfit, and someone it was like on like a truth, I believe. So a lot of those you don't really get to see on Twitter, but it had something to do with like he was wearing a Niners jersey, and it was implying that the Niners were going to beat the Ravens. I don't know the exact extent of it, but just look up Corgi wearing Niners jersey. I'm sure you'll find it somewhere. And for political reasons that it's been going around. My reason had nothing to do with any of it. It was preseason because I could tell they were getting behind Brock Purdy. So we all have different reasons, but I found this article to be very, very interesting. And typically, obviously, I would wait because we just did a few. I just did my video on what I think is going to happen with these teams in the playoffs. Of course, we'll have our official picks out. But you look at the money line on the Chiefs. You look at the way that all these articles are like, hey, but what about the Chiefs? Aren't they scripted too? It just seems to me like they already have their minds made up, and they're just trying to mitigate any kind of effect the Ravens Niners would have on people believing it's scripted. Again, otherwise, I think the smarter tactic would be don't say a word, just let the quote conspiracies go, and then you put the Lions Chiefs in there, and then you can come out and mock everybody mercilessly. But instead, now what they're doing is they're creating other quote scripts. So now people are going to cling on to them, and rightfully so. So the Chiefs get in there, and I would argue way more people, especially casual fans who might not think it's rigged right now, they're going to think something's up when we see a a kegger going on at the game with a side of football, and people are already saying that they're tired of that. So I could see, since they're so mad at the fans, I could see them giving us just Taylor Swift, basically just to, again, mock the fans, just to give it to the fans. But at the end of the day, I go back to what Pat McAfee said last year. Like I said, the fact that he brought up, oh, now fans are going to think that they're trying to build a new dynasty around Mahomes. Very specific the way he said it. He went into some details. For them to then give Mahomes two in a row would just be absolutely absurd. It would be the most tone deaf thing ever. And if I got it, if I'm wrong and it's not Ravens Niners and we do get the Chiefs, again in the long run, it's a loss I'm willing to take because it's going to open up so many more eyes. I know people tell me the Ravens seem obvious, but again, that's to the people that have been subscribed to the logo theory and already know it's scripted. For the people that think it's scripted, the Ravens going is not, or not even think, but they're on the fence. They're not sure. The Ravens going is not going to push them over the top. It's going to be this Swift nonsense and Mahomes having another ridiculous game. So I think we could effectively eliminate the Chiefs. I know so many people are saying no, it's Chiefs Lions. Lions has been 66 something, all these different things, and then the Chiefs. The Swift draw is too big of a draw. But again, for the first time ever, we are operating under the pretense that they aren't giving us the most ridiculously scripted game. It might not be the most this WrestleMania main event because they know so many people are onto it. So, like a year ago, people would say stuff like, "Oh, we were gonna we had it right, but they clearly changed the script," and I think that's baloney. But I do think now that they are going to treat the script a lot differently, and I wouldn't be surprised if they changed a lot of aspects and changed a thing or two because so many people are pointing out just how obvious it is. So it's going to be very, very interesting watching these championship games. I'm going to listen for every Freudian slip, everything these announcers say, everything they joke about, the pre games. I don't usually watch all that stuff, but I'll be watching it because this article is definitely just the beginning, and they already started with it before. But the fact again, they're putting McAfee's talking about the logos, Aaron Rodgers is talking about it, CBS is talking about it. I don't know if they talked about it on First Take and the others, but I haven't heard them talk about it on First Things First. They had came out and asked Brady, "Oh, do you think it's scripted?" And again, his response was, "Oh, if it was, would I accept a script where I would lose to Peyton Manning's brother twice?" And like, just think how ridiculous that is. It's like, you know what? I think you would accept a script where you would lose to Manning's brother twice and then go down as the greatest football player in the history of the game. So like, the rationalization makes no sense. It's just a sarcastic tone that they again completely over embellish and compare apples to oranges, and they hope that it's like 12-year-olds that will say, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." So they've created quite a paradox here, and as you can see, it's not slowing down. So I think, again, I think it's Ravens Niners. It might seem too obvious, but sometimes the one that's too obvious is what we get. And I just think, again, I don't think you can get more obviously scripted than the Swift led Chiefs doing it this year. It would just be absolutely insane. And we'll see what happens, but I guarantee you, if the Chiefs do advance, you're going to see so many more people. Even if you see the few articles like, "Oh, what happened to the Ravens? Or what happened to the logo theory?" It's not going to take away from the fact that people aren't didn't just see the logo and immediately all jump on board and say, "Oh, now that's the final straw. It's scripted." It's just one of a million things that people have noticed. And most things that these people have noticed is the ridiculous Mahomes push to be the next Brady. So I don't think they're going to just do that and, accept the fact that people are going to say, "You know what, okay, the logo didn't match up this time. We were wrong. The NFL can't be scripted." So yeah, this really helped me make up my mind. Like I said, I will have official picks just because there's covers and there's always another article I might see that makes me think the opposite. It's only, what is it, Tuesday? I think it's Tuesday. It's been a crazy week for me, but very early in the week, probably Thursday, I'll have just like I typically do. I'll have both games out, the spreads, if I like the over under. But I thought you guys would like this article again. I think you all deserve to just take a bow and salute yourself on a great job because we are doing a heck of a job. And again, this is everybody, the millions that genuinely know it is scripted between all of the things that have happened across the leagues, all of the ridiculous stories, and it's finally catching up to these players. It's finally catching up to the NFL, and it's really a good day. So hopefully we will see more articles like this because it'll give more away. But yeah, let me know what you think. If this changed anything for you, again, you could take it both ways. I get that because they mentioned the logo, so it's like, oh, would they mention the logo and then do it? But then with Taylor Swift, to me, that just takes priority, and I just can't imagine that wouldn't draw way more. And they do like controversy, but you don't want to get outed. And I think that would create way more controversy than anything the Ravens Niners could do. So after seeing this, I still like the Niners, of course, and I'm liking the Ravens even more. I think they basically gave it away now that they're trying to deflect from the inevitability of a Ravens Niners Super Bowl. So take care and happy earnings.